You mentioned TypeScript a little bit in there, but if I remember correctly, when you started on your TypeScript journey, you weren't fully on board. I remember you having a lot of struggles at the beginning with trying to type your very dynamic, large JavaScript libraries. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey there? Because I think now you're fully on the TypeScript bandwagon and understand the benefits.
Absolutely. So early on, the notion of types was a little jarring at first because I didn't come from a typed world. But I did become very familiar with Golang. A lot of our backend is written in Golang, and all of our backend devs are Go guys, and it became immediately apparent to me that types were extremely critical and crucial for scaling a business and scaling teams and processes and just having more confidence in your code. So I wasn't necessarily against the idea of types from the beginning, but I was just very scared to learn it because I knew that it was going to detach me from my momentum for a little while. So timing was a critical piece for me. And when you have libraries that are moving quickly and you're one of two people on a front end team and you're just kind of moving very quickly there, it's difficult to sell yourself on, okay, I'm going to just kind of halt everything I'm doing and start learning TypeScript. To make matters even more complicated, it wasn't that I was just halting work on like our application, like our SaaS product, because application on the spectrum of consuming application TypeScript and providing library level TypeScript, those are very different things. I was going to have to do both. And I didn't necessarily want to do them separate. So when I learned TypeScript, I wasn't just consuming it in my SaaS product and using it kind of in a very, I guess, end user developer way. But I had to learn it from a very complex context as well, in being able to write really great generics. I had to learn all about generics, and I had to learn about architecture, how to build libraries with TypeScript in mind, and I had to learn about how the compiler worked and how types flowed through a system. I had to learn the do's and don'ts of plugin development and extending TypeScript types and extend like system extension in TypeScript. And some of it was just over my head because I just had no idea what was going on. So it took a little bit longer for me to kind of ramp up because I jumped into the deep end on purpose.
Yeah.
But it was extremely helpful because now I feel like, I'm not scared of generics at all. I'm not scared of building library code or writing generics. And it doesn't mean I know everything. I actually, there's so many people out there that know so much more about like complex TypeScript. And now I know who those people are, and I can just say, hey, help me write this, I can understand it and wrap my head around it eventually. But that's kind of where I ended up. And it was harder at first. So it literally took me probably 6 months to get anywhere even remotely useful with my libraries, especially React Table was the library that I started with. It's a very complex library. It had lots of plugins and options and lots of types that permeated the entire system. So it was difficult. But once I got it down, it only took me about another 6 months to be like, okay, I think I have a handle on this. Moving to other libraries and React Query was actually the first one to get fully moved over with some help from the community. And to be honest, React Query is not too complex of a TypeScript project. There's not a whole lot of types there. In fact, we mostly just manage about 3 to 4, maybe 5 in some places, generics that kind of flow through the entire system. As opposed to something like table and router that, are anywhere between like 9 to 15, depending on where you are. So, yeah, it's been rewarding. And I knew from day one that it was going to change the way that I thought about programming. It's going to change the kind of developer that I was. So it was mostly just finding the right time. And yes, I complained, and I was I was like, oh my gosh, everyone's asking about TypeScript, and I don't want to build TypeScript right now for my library. Just leave me alone. So I think everybody kind of does that to some point when if when you're seasoned in the ecosystem and you need to learn something new and you've got a lot of baggage, it can be hard to jump in. So my invitation to anybody listening is that the time to jump in has passed. You need to get on board. I still have friends who are swimming against the current, and I just don't understand why, because the water is warm.
Yeah. I think where you approach it matters a lot. Like, if you approach it as an app developer, like TypeScript seems like just trivial. Like, it's like, oh yeah, I'll add that to my project. But at the library level, it's a totally different game. And from what it sounds like, you didn't just jump into the deep end, you jumped into the very deep end because you weren't writing the libraries in TypeScript. You were trying to define DTS files for your library, which in my mind is like an order of magnitude harder.
Yeah, I decided that early on that like adding types to the library was not really helping me. It was very quickly that I just decided it's going to be a rewrite, and I just basically nuked all the code. I mean, I kept the implementation code for a lot of it, but basically just had to nuke everything and start from scratch. It was difficult because, like you said, some of the dynamic parts of JavaScript are just untyped. The way that we design APIs in old school JavaScript, it's just there's no meaningful way to keep and retain and convey that type information. So it requires you to rethink the way that you structure. And I think some people see that as a downside, and they're like, oh, it's changing the flexibility and the power that I have. When in reality, it's just making you think in a safer way. And it's making you structure your code a little bit better. Like, in no way do I think it degrades any of the final output. If anything, it's 10 times better, right? It's just different.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting. Well, first off, it's really fascinating to hear about your sort of compressed journey with this, because from going to little experience with types to like having this like, these pretty robust libraries being fully typed or whatever is this whole massive effort, and you went through that really, really quickly. Even the sort of like cognitive shift from like, oh, I don't really want to do this, to like, okay, yeah, this is the way, is sort of an interesting thing to hear about, in sort of what I still consider a compressed timeline, because I've heard stories that are like many years in transition of like really trying to come to acceptance with it. But I think it's so true that there are things that you pick up on when you adopt TypeScript or like any type language. But one of the things is, I think, about being more explicit with your intent, just like using it as a tool for communication, because, code is written for people as much as it is for computers. I think that's something that we don't value enough. And then just going back to an earlier point too, I had also, when I started trying to do TypeScript stuff, I'd started trying to just like add like DTS files, definition files to JavaScript projects. And it was so hard. One of the things is I found that was not the best documented workflow. TypeScript is generally, they have good documentation, but like that, the outer edges of type definition can be a lot more complex. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting. But that
totally
reflects my experience.
I remember you triggered a memory going back. One of the very first individuals to help me out with TypeScript was Brandon Beyer, creator of Blitz, Flight Control. And, I remember being on a call with him, and he's just kind of showing me the ropes, and he was like, yeah, let's design this API that you have in your mind for this table library that you have. And we started talking, and he was just writing types and declaring functions. He didn't write any JavaScript at any point in time. And I was like, how are you doing this? This is so strange, and then, he'd go to like call the function, and it was all just auto-completed and type saved. And I'm like, but there's no implementation there. And he was kind of the very first person to help me really understand that TypeScript meta typing is its own language. And really, if you want to be productive and you want to feel powerful with TypeScript, because it's really, try writing a program without doing any implementation code. Just declare types and functions and just see how far you can get. And I think that's really when you start to dive into what TypeScript really is, right? In fact, I need to pull up my Twitter because there's a project that I've been seeing lately that got me really excited. And let me just scroll through my timeline here for a second and see if I can find it. But let's see. It's a meta TypeScript library that is being developed. Somebody that I know on Twitter. I can find it. Just give me a second. Yes. So his handle is Eckerby. I'm not sure. It's ECYRBEDEV is his handle. He's tech lead and creator of Zodios.org. But he has been working on this new library called. Basically, he's created like a programming it's almost like Lodash. It's very much like TS Toolbelt, but for types, and you can pipe types through transformers and map things. My goodness. If we have to, I will find it and put it in the show notes after. Because, hot script. There we go. So, it's a library of composable functions for the type level. Transform your TypeScript types in any way you want using functions you already know. So the first example here is where he's piping the integer 7 through a bunch of type transformers. He's got tuples range, tuple take, tuple map, match, tuples join, and you can just see if you go down to all of the different methods that they have implemented. We're talking things like we've got tuple manipulation, which is basically arrays, object manipulation, there's unions and strings and numbers and booleans. So he created a JSON parser in TypeScript, that parses JSON in the type level TypeScript language. And he created it in just a few lines of code. It was really crazy.
I think that's something that people may not appreciate with TypeScript, especially if you're coming from a JavaScript world and TypeScript's your first type language. TypeScript actually has an incredibly powerful type system. And, it really goes to show that Anders knows his business.
Yep.
It's incredibly impressive.
Oh, here's the link to that tweet where he shows a JSON parsing in TypeScript type system in just 50 lines. So using HotScript, he creates a JSON parser that will parse a string of whatever into JSON type. It's incredible. Anyways,
yeah,
we don't need to go down that tangent any further, but that can be like the capstone of the TypeScript conversation. But it really is incredible what you can do with it.
Yeah, it is crazy what you can do in the type system. The craziest thing I've done is I created a grid component for our design system that takes a grid template as a string and then breaks the template up into types and returns grid cells that can only use those as the area for their types. So it uses joins and trims, and it's very hard to understand code while you're looking at it, but the types are it's just doing kind of JavaScripty things.
That's awesome.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.